Thank you so much for joining me, Patrick Casement, for this conversation as part of the Trade Unwrapped, a food, farming and countryside commission project designed to explore what matters to us in the UK as we build new trading relationships with the world. Today, we're focusing on how trade affects Northern Ireland, which faces a rather different set of challenges from the rest of the UK and Brexit world. To examine some of the issues, I'm fortunate to be joined by a group drawn from our Northern Ireland inquiry team: John Best, an arable and beef farmer and former chair of Food Northern Ireland; Gary McFarlane, Director for Northern Ireland for the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health; and Joe MacDonald, Senior Manager for Corporate Affairs for ASDA in Northern Ireland. Just to set the scene, I wanted to say a few things about some considerations that set Northern Ireland apart from the rest of the UK. And these include an agri-food sector that's a major contributor to the economy rather than being a slight offshoot, as it were. 3/4 of our agricultural output is exported from Northern Ireland, so trade is absolutely vital to us. We have a farming structure based on very small family farms that is very vulnerable to change. We have a land border to the EU member state and an agri-food sector that's highly integrated with that state. Finally, we have a separate agreement under the withdrawal agreement called the Northern Ireland Protocol that affects how we can trade in the future. I want to take that last point as a starting place for what I thought how we might explore some of the implications of that protocol. And I think, given the concerns about the supply chain from Great Britain, a good place to start would be with you, Joe. If you could give us a few thoughts about what you think the implications are going to be for supplies coming here to Northern Ireland.
Well, Patrick, this is all at the moment still under discussion within the joint committee within the European Union and the UK teams. And that's not a particularly transparent process. So we're all basically on the outside wondering how things are developing. I think at the heart of it, we've a couple of problems which need to be overcome. The protocol is a legally binding international agreement, and we have to respect that. At the same time, the European Union rulebook never imagined the trade that's flowing between Britain and Northern Ireland. The European Union rulebook for borders is written for Europe's border with the rest of the world. So if a boatload of grain arrives in Europe from South America, then the European rulebook can deal with that in terms of export health certificates and customs declarations and everything else. So actually the trade both ways actually between Britain and Northern Ireland is completely different to that, obviously. In my world, in the supermarket world, we would bring in goods to Northern Ireland which in lorries which contain thousands of different items, and the European rulebook never envisaged that. But here we are. There's a political situation that has took us to this moment where the island of Ireland will follow EU rules into the future. So it's going to take, we feel it'll really take a special arrangement for Northern Ireland that recognises our unique position, as always, looking both ways, looking to the south and Europe and looking to Britain. And without a kind of a special arrangement, it's going to be really difficult to find the answer within the EU rulebook.
Gary, I know you've written extensively about this whole issue here of trade, and I wonder what your perspective on this would be.
Thanks, Patrick. Well, yes, Tim Lang, I and other colleagues, you're right, have written extensively on this and have lobbied extensively on it as well. And that was, of course, in the context of no deal. And since those papers were drafted, of course, we have the Northern Ireland Protocol. But as Joe has just alluded to, that only fixes some of it. It doesn't fix it all by any stretch of the imagination. One of the things that we really struggled to get, I mean, we did write a paper specifically looking at the impact of Brexit, and particularly a no-deal Brexit, on food supply chains into Northern Ireland. And actually, we were unable to get And we did speak to all the major supermarkets. We were unable to get any real reliable data on that. But suffice to say, what we do know, and Joe and John will know as well, is that there is vast amounts of food supplies flow both across the Irish border, the land border, and from Great Britain onto the island of Ireland. In fact, apart from the goods that come via sea directly from France, I would say that the vast majority, Joe might have better details on this than I have, but the vast majority of foodstuffs on our shelves that come from outside the United Kingdom or Ireland come through Great Britain. And I think Joe has alluded to some of the real challenges that lie ahead with that. And I think his point about a special arrangement is a really interesting point, because of course, you know, there are all sorts of potential problems here. Not just checks and the delays and the disruption to the just-in-time model that food supply chains work on, but also the tariffs potentially, because Northern Ireland will, let's be clear, the way we're headed at the minute, Northern Ireland will become, in effect, a border for the European Union. And that means that anything coming from Great Britain will be subject to checks and potential and all that goes with that. And the other thing, just to mention, and we can get into this conversation if you wish at a later stage, but one of the things that we're particularly concerned about at the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health, apart from the potential impacts to the food supply chain and the impacts that will have on dietary health, on affordability, on food poverty, on illness and disease as a result of potentially the either unavailability or unaffordability of foodstuffs, there's food crime, which is a major concern for us. The European food safety system is the best system in the world, and one might think that, you know, if Northern Ireland stays within that and is subject to the rules, then it's all is well. But that's not actually the case, and I am quite sure that there are criminals already plotting, and have been for several years, about how to actually exploit the gaps this is going to open up.
That's very worrying, yeah. John, one of the things that struck me is that a lot of small specialist producers in GB are going to find the burden of paperwork, of paying upfront tariffs, and so on, bringing food into Northern Ireland is going to be a barrier to them, and they may cease sending stuff here. And I wonder, do you feel that the Northern Ireland food sector is up to filling a gap? I mean, it seems to me there's an opportunity there, but you know, are we in a position to be able to make use of that opportunity? Is really the point I was going to ask you on this.
Yeah, Patrick, I think we definitely are in a position to probably exploit our unique position if within the Northern Ireland Protocol, if we get the freedom to do that. And by freedom, you know, I just mean the opportunity to trade both north, south, and east, west, because realistically, those are our two biggest food markets. And to go back to a point that Gary said, actually, I think that can be one of our unique selling points. The fact that, you know, we are small enough to actually introduce traceability and transparency on our products and demonstrate credibility and use that as a marketing tool going forward. And I don't just mean for even, you know, small producers. I think there's an opportunity there for the larger processor to do that and use our position and our reputation. But to do that, we must first of all ensure that we have a sort of credible and auditable system in place to demonstrate the credibility of what we're doing. The other thing really about the border is, you know, and everybody said it's unique, but I don't think the bureaucrats in either Brussels or London understand just how unique their products could go back and forth processing and further processing 2 or 3 times. And I think it's very important that there's no impediment to that. And I'm thinking really of our 2 big sectors, which are beef and dairy. And both the beef and dairy processors on both sides of the border rely on volume to be competitive. And you know, if our dairy industry is going to compete with New Zealand, we can't have any impediment to, you know, them being efficient processors. I suppose that's slightly different from the small processors in Northern Ireland who are going to use our unique position. They have, you know, they have great potential, but it will take marketing and it will take promotion by the government.
Patrick, I was going to say, if I may, I personally don't really subscribe to the idea that, you know, maybe in the middle of all of this, there'll be an opportunity for Northern Ireland agri-food to backfill some opportunities in Northern Ireland. I think, okay, that may happen, but I think there's a far bigger thing which is more important, which is that GB companies do continue to do business in Northern Ireland, because that creates a conversation, gives them a foothold here. It keeps Northern Ireland on the map in terms of the GB marketplace. So, you know, the more the GB companies continue to trade in Northern Ireland, continue to send people here to do business here, the more it opens the door for John and the industry here to keep trading the other way, because that is obviously, has always traditionally been one of our, you know, major marketplaces. So if we see that diminish and less GB based businesses doing business in Northern Ireland, I think that will be to the detriment overall of Northern Ireland agri-food.
Yeah, I'm very taken with the point John made about the idea of a sort of effectively a higher standard for Northern Ireland, that we are going to, you know, we can actually have something that we can really sell our product on, that we can stand over as well. Gary, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, and whether you think that there is that has the potential to take off. It does require quite a big systems change for our agriculture, though, because I think, you know, we've got to actually prove that we are farming in a more sustainable way. It's not enough just to claim that we are. I think people will start to examine the evidence very quickly.
Yeah. The issue of agriculture, of agricultural sustainability, and by the way, I mean in a global sense here, is a huge challenge. I read a report a couple of weeks ago, not that long ago, or an article in the Guardian, which was suggesting basically that even if we reduce to zero all other sources of carbon emissions, unless we change the global agricultural food supply and food production and supply system, then we still won't meet our carbon targets by 2050. Now, you know, I stress the word global. I mean, that's not to say that agriculture in Northern Ireland is the worst production system in the world by any stretch of the imagination. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying this is a global challenge. But just to go back to something that John mentioned, I mean, our main problem, I think, in terms of the basket, the typical food basket for Northern Ireland, is we're really deficient in fresh fruit and vegetables, really deficient. And we rely on Europe, actually, for all of that part of our food basket. Now, you know, we're very good at producing beef. We're very good at producing dairy, as John has said, and the vast majority of that, and John will know more about this than I do, but and so too Joe. But the vast majority of that, as I understand it, goes to the rest of the world. It's not actually consumed within Northern Ireland, which doesn't make sense to me. Not as an environmentalist, it just doesn't make sense. I presume there's an economic reason why that is the case, but I think that's something we need to fix, frankly, because part of the solution to tackling the global food supply and production system that at the minute isn't sustainable.
John, I don't know if you'd like to add something to that, because that's sort of a challenge in a way down to the farming community.
Yeah, Gary, I mean, really, we produce more agriculturally as a country than we can consume.
Oh, of course.
You know, our economy is agriculture based. If we were just producing what would feed our population, I think you would find the cost would be considerably higher, because, you know, even in milk you have byproducts, in beef in particular you have byproducts which our population don't want to eat. Only recently, you know, they've started to eat, you know, belly pork, but you have your chicken, you have your legs and your feet and so on, which, and a lot of your fifth quarter, which are all a very important return from the beef sector, chicken sector, which have to be exported. I mean, the agricultural processing industry, to be competitive in a world market, depends on volume to drive the unit cost down. Otherwise, you know, the cost of any particular item would be much more than it is at present.
Yeah. I understand all of that, John. Maybe you misunderstood me. I wasn't suggesting that that all the food that's produced on the island of Ireland should be consumed on the island of Ireland. I was more suggesting that a lot more of it should be, rather than sending it to other parts of the world and bringing the same commodity from other parts of the world back into Northern Ireland. Chicken, for example, is a great example. You know, most of our chicken doesn't come from Northern Ireland, it comes from elsewhere, yet we produce more than enough here to feed this population. That's the point I'm making. I would like to see the food that's produced here consumed by the people that live here.
Yeah, well, I suppose chicken's a good point, because actually the reason chicken is sucked in here is because it is cheaper than the chicken that is actually produced here. And that is down to standards of production.
Of course.
Welfare standards, basically, and the fact that you know, they're using GMOs. So, and I suppose that brings the discussion to where we are in Brexit now. Are we prepared to accept that going forward? But I mean, Moy Park standards are much higher than you can buy chicken, even from some European countries, and certainly from the Far East, much cheaper than Moy Park can supply you with chicken. And
I totally accept that, John, and I think that is a conversation that needs to be had. I understand that you're absolutely right. Totally agree with you. The quality and standards of our food is excellent, which is why, rather selfishly, I'd rather see the people here eating it than other people eating it. But the point is that you're quite rightly elucidating here is it's an economics are driving this, not well-being, not animal welfare, not environmental standards. It's economics, and that we need to have a real grown-up conversation about that.
And to come back to your point, Gary, about vegetables and fruit and vegetables, we do, I mean, we're probably a bit limited in the fruit we can grow here, but certainly vegetables, we could grow most of what we consume. Obviously not seasonally all the year round, as it were, but, you know, we could do a lot better. And I think we do need to explore how we expand that vegetable sector within Northern Ireland, because, you know, it's traditionally not been the case. I know that it's fraught with problems, and it's obviously, I'm sure John will say that farmers are just not geared up. They haven't, no tradition of doing it. And of course, it's combined with the fact that our consumption of fruit and vegetables is lower than anywhere else in Europe in Northern Ireland. But I mean, I can't help feeling that the two may be tied together there, that we could actually improve our own public health if we could improve our agriculture to cover a wider range of foods. Anyway, that's I think
the person we haven't mentioned so far, Patrick, is the consumer,
yes.
And that's really who the conversation has to be with.
Well, I hope that we'd move on to that in our second part of our conversation in a way, because there are a series of issues there that I think we need to probably explore. And I mean, we're coming more or less to the end of the time for this first session, but I don't know if anybody's any other points they want to raise on just the movement of goods that is going to, you know, and the possibilities and dangers that we're facing at the end of, you know, within the next 6 weeks, as it were. It's all going to happen on the 1st of January, isn't it?
It is.
It's scary. I'm on the board of a local co-op, and you know, they've about 3 different labelling options in one particular business, all of which they have the ability to go for, but they don't know which one yet. And you know, that's only a simple part of it. They've done all their registrations to an office in the south. You know, the bureaucracy that's involved to take us this far, 6 weeks from Brexit, and businesses still don't know what regulations they're going to be administered by.
Yeah,
sorry,
very
facing John's right. We're facing, Patrick, a very short timetable now to be, you know, there's going to be a big reveal. We'll find out what the free trade agreement or not with Europe is. We'll find out what the protocol actually means for Great Britain to Northern Ireland and vice versa. So it doesn't give us a lot of time as an industry to think strategically about what's the best road to now set out on here. You know, is the UK retail market still going to be the most important thing for the agri-food sector for Northern Ireland? Is it actually an opportunity somewhere else in the world to do things completely differently? So some very clever people are going to have to think very quickly when this all becomes clear. So now's the time to be thinking about it, but not the time to be making decisions. Because we've had the point we've reached, to Gary's point earlier, the kind of equilibrium we are in is a result of the fact that our policy environment has essentially been fairly stable since the early 1970s. So the whole industry has found its level at the moment. The only disruption we've probably faced that was on a grand scale was the beef export ban, which literally disrupted trade. And one of the things that we remember back from that time was how agile the industry was in Northern Ireland at responding, repositioning itself, and finding a market in the UK marketplace. So it feels to me like in the early part of 2021, we're going to have to think really strategically about the opportunities that Northern Ireland have. We all know about the risks, but we're all going to have to think as well. And there's going to have to be a role really for the industry, for the trade bodies, and the Northern Ireland Executive will have to get behind something as well. You know, if we all push in the same direction, there's things to get after in the early part of next year.
Gary, final thoughts from you? Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think Joe's made some really good points there, which perhaps are a little bit more at one level optimistic than than perhaps some of the more pessimistic things we've been talking about. The really big challenges, but I think that, you know, there is very little time left for businesses to react to this, but Joe's right. I mean, history has proven that the industry is very nimble to react to things, and you know, no doubt we will find our way through this, but it's going to be challenging.
Maybe a bit of pain before we get to the pleasure. Yes, I think that's right. Well, thank you all very much indeed for your contributions to that. A really interesting discussion, and I think, of course, a considerable concern. But as Joe says, there may well be some great opportunities that arise out of it ultimately. That wraps up our first session, but I would be very keen you should join us for another session that we're going to explore some of the other issues arising from trade and potential trade agreements in the future. Thank you.